Thank you for joining us today. We are in the privileged company of Genie Communications. We've got the wonderful Gill, Galassi and Helen McLeod, and they're going to be talking us through the consequences of not having the right communications, particularly in a crisis. You may be judged very differently a year on from now, depending upon how you handle your communications now and how strategically you face into those. So consider how you communicate, consider how you will be judged, and think forward how that can be. Joined with myself is my partner from Cube Thinking, John Woodruffe. Like I said, we've got Helen and Gill from Genie Communications. So firstly, hello, lovely to see you.
Hi.
Wave in a communication type of way. Yes. And we're going to face into the first question if we can. We're going to jump straight into it because I'm so keen to learn about this. So how should businesses manage communication with others through this current stage and through any change decisions potentially coming up?
I'll answer that if that's all right, Helen. So for me, I'd probably try and split this into two different parts. So you've got two main groups of people that you'll need to communicate with, external staff and then employees. So the most important thing really is to plan what the impact of any events will have on these stakeholders, on these people. Then you have to plan the right way to communicate with each of these people too. Who should do it, how and when. For small businesses, it should really be your decision makers who communicate directly with your stakeholders. But of course, when you've got a large customer base, you need a suite of different tactics. With external comms, it's a good time to be really transparent with how you engage with your customers, with your partners, and also with your suppliers. It's important that these groups know what's happening and exactly what you're doing. A lot of people make their decisions based on trust. They'll judge you for a long time based on your reputation and the trust that they have in you. So over time, we've seen examples of companies such as Ratners jewelers. They went under because they just lost all the trust that any customers could possibly have with them by the things that they said. People are really influenced by what they read about brands like Ratners or your own brand. So having a clear plan of how you reach people with the right information is absolutely essential. Brands invest a lot of time raising awareness, but what a positive reputation helps you drive isn't brand awareness, it's brand consideration. So the example I'd talk about here would be Virgin Atlantic. So if you asked 10 people if they'd heard of Virgin Atlantic, then I reckon 9 out of 10 at least would say, yeah, they've heard of them. They've got a really high brand awareness score. If you asked them right now if they would consider buying from this brand, if they'd consider the brand, then that number would be considerably smaller than it was a month ago, based on some of the actions that they've taken during the past few weeks with their colleagues.
So it's like really important then, isn't it, that the communication that everybody, all the businesses have outside of work, or internal or external, is really important. So how do you think that the company should manage the social media?
So social is just one part of the communication mix, and it needs to be managed carefully at all times. It's important to keep up engagement with the community of followers and also have robust plans for any challenging situations, whether this Q&A or just standardised responses or times that you're going to respond. If, for example, you need to temporarily close part of the business, then social will be an essential channel to keep people informed, as well as to respond to some of the customer inquiries that might come in. People right now are more active on social media than they ever have been. So there's an opportunity to go out there now and reach new customers. It's the perfect time to invest in your social channels, but as long as you have the right tone in your message.
So at the moment, Jill,
yeah.
I guess we don't really know what will happen next, and we're in very, very uncertain times. There's different probably places that people are at. How do we plan for that?
It's really difficult to plan for a future that we don't know when we don't know what it looks like, but this is always the situation in any crisis. My first thought is always don't panic. It's really important not to go out there and make any knee-jerk reactions. Instead, it's really useful to have the expertise, the communications expertise involved in all your scenario planning for immediate operational changes, and then look at the longer term strategic changes. When I've worked for large corporates, I've helped the exec team reflect on the external and internal reputational impact of the big decisions that they're making, and then plan the proactive and reactive communications that protect reputation. Your crisis comms should always be tested and ready to go. A bit like a business continuity plan, and it should be an element of your business continuity plan. You should know who you need to communicate with and how, as well as who will control and own elements of the plan. For me, navigating through a crisis sometimes feels a bit like a game of chess. So you've got the king, and that represents your reputation. Your aim as a business is always going to be to move forward to reach your goals, but you have to make sure that you have the right pieces in play to protect yourself, or it's game over.
So we talk about external communication, and because we're always thinking about how we're going to look to the outside world, but I think what a lot of companies forget about is that internal communication. So how we're going to be seen from our own employees. So what do you think we should do about getting the right tactics for communication with employees, Helen?
So this situation really brings lots of opportunity to cement that engagement with people. What we've seen is a level of camaraderie and connection increasing. We're all kind of working towards a big, clear goal. And very often this is what you should be working for communicating in a company. But there are lots of different priorities and they're always competing. And what the coronavirus situation's brought is we need to keep the business running under new circumstances. Everyone's working from home and it's absolutely clear that we're all pointing towards the same thing, which brings tons of energy and connection with people. So that's working really well. The flip side of it is it's easy to get it wrong. As Gill said, we don't know the situations, the scenarios are changing, and if we promise too much, we might regret that, or we could leave too much doubt and leave people worried and concerned about staying with the business. So you've just got to be clear and really honest throughout. And as you said at the start, I think that there'll be a big question when people go for interviews with companies and change in next year. What did you do for your people during the coronavirus? What did you do? How did you protect them? And you're going to need to be ready to answer that with your actions that you've taken.
So Helen, in view of that, what should businesses be doing right now?
So it's the same as Gill said, really, for external comms. It's about having a look at the stakeholder groups and the impact of events on them. And I think communication needs to increase. We've certainly been advising that where you might have normally heard from your chief exec every month, that should probably be every week right now. And certainly through every major government announcement, particularly if you're hearing information from a government announcement that you can interpret in a number of ways, you'll need to plan what that scenario means for the business and then who you need to communicate in those stakeholder groups. So having that crisis comms plan that's got your stakeholders laid out and you can map the impact of them quickly means you can decide what to say. And that will include the customer facing teams in a business, the back office teams. They'll all have different impacts from what's happening. For internal comms, we've been advising people to kind of look at buckets of messaging as the approach of how we do it normally. And probably the first one of those is confidence in the business. There's a lot of things that you read in the media about impact on companies, which will create people wondering what's going on. So they want to know what the impact's likely to be. They'll want to know that the business is still progressing and that there's success and that there are plans to move forward, so that they've got their own confidence in what's going to happen. There's also then the part of practical advice. So people are working from home en masse for the first time. So how do we do that? How do we cope with 1 million Zoom meetings a day? How do we manage one-to-ones? How do we have team meetings? How do we have just chit-chat together? And the connection that you'd build just sat together around the table talking about what was on TV last night, and you kind of don't have that. So some of those really practical things are important. And then building on that is the people support. There's a definite impact on people's mental well-being across this situation. The input of things that are happening to them personally or in their families or that they're seeing on the media have an impact on you at work. And an employer has a duty of care to not just talk about mental health, but to put practical things in place that address mental well-being and the issues that are happening there. And then there's a part of energy and connection. So how are you bringing those people together? So back to the idea that you're all sat around chit-chatting perhaps at break times together in a business. How are you doing that? What sort of fun things are you doing to make the camaraderie and energy and this we're connected as a collective bunch of people that want to knock our socks off right now for a shared goal will be the power that drives the business. If everyone's just sat at home lonely and worried and they don't feel like they're part of a team anymore and they lose their energy and drive to move the business forward, then that'll prove costly later on.
So it's quite so the communication with your staff is just as important, isn't it, as your external communication?
Definitely, and your people are the engine of your business all the way along, and particularly the more that they're talking to your customers or suppliers or to the community that your business is in, particularly for a small business, will reflect on you in the future. Yeah. So definitely.
I mean, we mentioned earlier about external communication, and it reminds me, myself and Jay, we did a big survey, and one of the surveys was showing that 50% of solicitors and accountants have not communicated with the clients. You know, and it's unbelievable, isn't it? You know, and it's as if they're just burying their heads in the sand. But I think if we can get the external communication right and make sure that we talk to everybody, but I think it's important that we communicate with all of the stakeholders. But one of the things that we've not talked about today is we've got the employees, which is important, and they might be working from home today. But what about the people who are being furloughed?
So the furloughs is a really tricky one because there are particular rules that are quite clear about they shouldn't be doing any work, they're not at work at the moment, they shouldn't be engaging in any work activities. But you still want to make them feel like they're part of the business. And I guess a further complication is the things that we've started to see in the media already, which there will be more of, where British Airways has announced their intention to consult for redundancy with a bunch of people that are currently furloughed, which will start to create this concern. And these people are not even connected in the ways we've talked about before with business. So the main channel we'd go for there is the line manager, the trusted person that's connected with them, and they should have regular dialogue with people that are out of the business, and they should be really prepared for how to do that. And this goes right back to the first things we were saying about planning and scenarios. For the scenario, if a business is working through a situation where that might become what happens, you need to be able to answer that question. And the manager that contacts the colleague needs to be able to answer a question. Does this mean I'm going to be made redundant? You be really clear about that and make sure that you answer that well and in a way that will be okay, whatever the future might be. So it's about making sure that you've, through the scenarios, planned this as a key audience in there and decided how to communicate with them, you know, as the future comes through.
So there's a lot of talk at the moment about the new normal, the phrase we're often using, guilty of that myself. But what do you think that means for communications? Because we're in a very, very different place than we were traditionally.
Yeah, I think that's going back to that trust word that we've talked about today. It's about really building that trust with your people, with your customers, with your partners, with your stakeholders, and it's essential. It's essential right in this moment, and it's essential for the future. I think it's fair to say that lots of businesses are going to need to make some really, really tough decisions so that they can survive. Having really well planned, really well organised, and really well managed communications is going to be the difference between losing and winning, between going under and gaining trust. I think you can use it to your advantage a bit at the moment. If you go out and communicate really well with that right tonality, then you've got a really good chance of getting through this. On the internal comm side, I think we've seen companies move really quickly to really good digital solutions. So it's about them maintaining the momentum on these and keeping up that feeling of one team behind a huge audacious goal. I think the other thing to consider really is the new normal isn't a year down the line. We're already in that new normal space. So communications is as important right now in this moment as it will be in 6 months. You can't put this off.
So, Gill and Helen, thank you so much. I think to summarise there, going back to the point at the beginning, was how will a business, how will a leader be judged on their response at the moment, and how they are building up that trust, and how authentic is the message, how sincere is the message. These things are crucial, these things are important, and as John said, we're seeing silence in some cases from people who really would have expected better communication for. To those ends, if people do want to get further advice regarding communications, the art of communication, we've learned so much just engaging with you just in this conversation there. People can contact you, and as we share this message, we'll make sure that your contact details are on there too. And I believe you might be doing some masterclasses for executives further down the line too, which might just assist people, because all of a sudden we're all on television so much more now.
Yeah, we're going to be running some masterclasses. We'll be running some masterclasses later on in the year. And if you're interested, just contact us in the Strictly Come Dancing, Gill at Genie Comms. The masterclasses will look at things like crisis management, managing through change, and how you come across on different types of media. So it's a scaled down version of a media training session. And we'll teach you how to tell a story, key messages, getting your point across, what to wear, what not to wear, how to look good on Zoom, things like that really. So we'll be in touch with further details of those too via the Cube partners.
Brilliant. Gill, thank you very much for that. And also, if there's any business leaders out there who can't wait for so long, can they contact you for a bespoke offering? Particularly, I'm just thinking if somebody gets called upon for example, a television commentary or something along those lines, so you still are there to support them.
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's what we do best really. We're here to help anybody who needs that extra boost of support during times like this. And what I'd also say, if somebody just wants to get in touch for a bit of a chat or just want some informal pointers, we're also comfortable about bits of advice here and there. If someone's really struggling and just wants some additional support in the very, very short term, just drop us a note and we'd be more than happy to have a chat with you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe.